First, we're going to take a look at the storyline for the partner, which is represented by the man significator. And we can see that he's showing up in the house of expression, which suggests he sees the relationship through the lens of communication and expression, which of course is difficult because they're not speaking to each other. We can go to the house of man and see that he's also showing up as the crossed swords. So he may be creating conflict, or he may be acting in a combative manner. We can look to the house of conflict to kind of get a sense of the root of the conflict. And we see that the guardian angel shows up here, and I'm interpreting that as forgiveness is the problem. Like the real root of the conflict is that nobody is saying they're sorry. I'm also going to go back up here to the microphone. We find that the microphone is in the house of temptation. And that can just mean what the person is tempted to do, like what they really want to do, but maybe they don't feel like they can. And since it's a microphone, it shows that he really does want to talk to his girlfriend, but maybe he just doesn't feel like he should be making the first move. Over here on this side, we can see the unicorn in the first house, and it's showing number one, karmic lesson, but it's also the beginning or the start, or it's kind of like the root of the question, like why was the question asked, and it shows that there might be some unrealistic expectations in terms of this relationship, or perhaps maybe he has unrealistic expectations of his partner, and how to resolve a dispute like this. And then we also can see the bikini reversed in the house of fantasy. Usually when it shows up, anything that shows up here is not real. It's not happening. It's not real. It's fake. It's false. So we look at this as sex is not happening. But it is unusual that it's kind of showing up in this timeline when there aren't really any other issues connecting to it, and it's not based on the context of the question. So really just looking at his timeline, we can see issues of communication, a desire to communicate, but instead generating conflict that is born out of probably a resistance to forgiveness. Now let's take a look at the seeker's storyline. We can see there are only 3 cards here. The seeker is showing up in the house of severance, which means that she is seeing this relationship through an ending. She's seeing the relationship really as ending, even though it hasn't ended. And really the way that she's posed the question does not suggest that she is thinking that, but we can see this here. Then when we look here at the house of woman, we can see she's represented by the wine glass, which shows that she is still romanticizing the relationship. So although in a way she's thinking that it's going to end, she is still, being romantic about it. She still wants the romance. Let's look underneath. We go to the house of romance, and we have the scissors, which means there's no romance going on, even though we can see that is how she is still expressing. And we can also see that this is an expectation because it's above her head. So she's still expecting romance. But we can see, since the scissors is below her, there is also a primal impulse to cut out this relationship. And I talked before about like self-sabotage. This is definitely one of those scenarios that, whether the seeker is aware of it or not, there's a lot of her energy that is perhaps creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, or may create a self-fulfilling prophecy that this relationship ends. We can even see the visual with the scissors. It looks like the scissors is cutting her out of this relationship. And then also, if we look at the numerical theme for this storyline, it's also a 9. 9 is about endings. The person is asking, how can I release the past and start over? So this is, to me, why the storylines are important. We can see just the cards that are really part of that story for this person. So even though the question does not say anything about the relationship ending, we can see there's kind of a preoccupation with that based on her own storyline. And that would be something that I would share with the seeker, just so that if you don't want this relationship to end, that mindset or that attitude has to change. You may not be aware of it, but you may be automatically expecting this to be the end of the relationship. Now we're going to take a look at the grand tableau. So we've turned over all of the cards and we just want to take a look at everything. And I really think about it is, if it didn't show up in their storyline, these are just other influences that are going on. I also like to look at the grand tableau in terms of seeing how they're relating to each other. And also I like to look at those 4 placements around them to get a sense of their concerns and motivation. And then just if anything else stands out, there might be certain houses that you want to check and see what card is in that house. But you don't necessarily have to go through every single card unless you just want to. I think we can get a lot of really good information just from looking at the storylines though. But what I do want to look at here is, first of all, the placement of the significators from each other. So what's really great is that they're still on the same path. So they're in the same row, and it's also great that they're looking at each other, which to me the looking at each other to me looks like they're moving towards each other. So no matter what's actually happening in the relationship, there's still a chance that they can come together. And there's not much distance between them, okay? But we can see 2 things that are between them. And we'll talk about those things in just a minute. Let's look at the partner, and we're going to check these 3 cards that are around him. So first of all, his main concern is here with the mountain. His concern is that this is an insurmountable problem, that this is too huge of an obstacle to get around. What's above him is the suitcase. So he's expecting there to be emotional baggage, like unresolved feelings, and maybe he's expecting to run away, or maybe he's expecting her to run away, pack up the bags and get out. What's below him is the reversed cat. So when the cat is reversed, the cat scratches, that's what I say. But in this case, it's probably showing us when the cat is reversed, it can be just isolation, like independence turns to isolation. So his primal impulse is just to disappear, really, just to kind of isolate himself. Now, when we look at her significator, we are seeing that her main concern is the lack of commitment, the fact that the relationship seems to be unsteady now, on unsteady ground, based on the reversed anchor. She is still expecting romance, though, so that's good. It's like she's got optimism, she's got hope for things to kind of continue on romantically. But her unconscious motivation is the mask, that something is hidden. Like maybe there's some other reason, why they haven't gotten back together. And we can see that what's behind the mask, or what's next to the mask, is the bikini reverse. So this could be, we see it's still behind her. So these could still be thoughts that she's thinking, well, maybe this is about something else. Maybe he started to see someone else. We can see the fact that the bikini reverse is in the house of fantasy, that's not true. Um, but that when we look here, sometimes you can see what's behind or what's next to something to show kind of what is still in the back of their mind. So I'm just following that all the way back to bikini. We already talked about this card that is beneath her, the scissors. So her primal impulse. And I just want to say, to me, the primal impulse is still unconscious. It's more of a subconscious thing. It's not something that they're doing purposely. It's just like an impulse, a reaction. That's the way I would look at it. Her reaction is to just cut these cords of attachment. One thing I do notice, and it seems to show up pretty frequently, is the cat and dog together. And they'll either be like right next to each other, or there'll be one card between them. When I see this pattern, to me, what this shows is that we have two people who just think very differently about how to conduct a relationship. They're like, they get along like cats and dogs. And not necessarily that they have problems, but it just means in this particular context of the question, they're just not seeing eye to eye, because one is seeing things like a cat and one is seeing things like a dog, essentially. But what I really like about this is that the heart is still between them. Now, of course, these are all reversed, but if we were to turn it upside down, we would see a different picture here. So that's really what I'm seeing, is that they think very differently about what is supposed to happen in a relationship, but there is still love between them. That to me is a positive note. But let's look at this reverse, because when we are looking at our grand tableau in its upright position, we can see that reversed heart shows up in the house of challenge. So that is where things are now, that reversed heart. And to me, that's probably just dealing with the emotional distance that really just keeps increasing with this relationship. So, like I said, you don't have to keep looking at everything. It is important probably also to note that in the house of emotion, there's tears. Since that didn't show up in either timeline, I'm kind of looking at it as both of them are in tears or in pain about this dispute and separation. And the more that they go along with this, it seems to be creating more and more emotional distance. We already talked a little bit about the unicorn. We now see that the cat reversed is in the final position, which is the house of healing. We can also look at this position as the outcome. So we're looking at the outcome being, again, isolation. The cat reversed is not just independent, but they want to go, they're alone. They're basically like a loner. So we can see that the direction of the relationship is becoming like more and more emotional distance, an increase of that, to the point of isolating themselves from each other. So if they, I've already said these readings to me aren't necessarily about guidance. They show all of the aspects and the details. You could probably give guidance, though, based on what you've learned about their independent storylines, and then some of the additional information that you can see here in the grand tableau.